Welcome to the National Alopecia Areata Foundation's webinar, Dating with Alopecia. Joining us today is licensed psychotherapist Allison Mann and former New York City NAF support group leader and licensed clinical social worker Donna Astor Lazarus. I'm Judy Williams, Support and Education Director for NAF. Before we start the webinar, I want to cover a few housekeeping details. We have disabled chat for this webinar session, and please post questions for Donna and Allison in the Q&A section. Please keep your questions general for the benefit of all audience members. This webinar is being recorded, and all registrants will receive a link to the recording via email. And finally, please share your feedback with us. At the conclusion of the webinar, a link to a short survey will pop up in your browser window. Please complete the survey there. This webinar is part of NAF's You Are Not Alone Education and Empowerment webinar series. NAF gratefully acknowledges the support provided for this webinar series by our partners Eli Lilly and Company, Pfizer, and Sun Pharma. Before we start today's webinar, I'd like to tell you a little bit about NAF and our mission. The National Alopecia Areata Foundation is the leading advocacy organization for alopecia areata. NAF's mission is to support research to find a cure or acceptable treatment for alopecia areata, support those with the disease, and educate the public about alopecia areata. NAF's vision is an empowered community with the choice to embrace or live free of alopecia areata. To learn more about NAF support resources and research and advocacy activities, or to join us as an advocate or supporter, please visit our website at naf.org. And now on to today's webinar, Dating with Alopecia. We're honored to have both Allison and Donna here today. Allison is a licensed psychotherapist specializing in the areas of anxiety, body image, self-esteem, and eating disorders. She has had alopecia areata since the age of 4, which is a large influence for her to enter the mental health field. She provides mental health resources for the hair loss community and created the first therapeutic journal for hair loss, the Hair Loss Diary. She's also passionate about spreading awareness about alopecia through her social media platforms. Donna, she's a former New York City NAF support group leader who has a long career in behavioral health, starting as an inpatient social worker and progressing to become director of 2 Carrier Clinic outpatient mental health centers. She subsequently joined the Montgomery, New Jersey Child Study Team as a tenured school social worker. Ultimately, starting in 2003, Donna now's focus has been solely on her full-time private practice in New Jersey. So let's welcome them both, Donna and Allison, and thank you all for being here today.
Thank you. Awesome. So
Thank you.
I will share my screen with you all, and then we will get started. And if anything looks funky, let me know. Alrighty. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for that introduction, Judy. As you mentioned, we're talking today about dating with alopecia. It's February, it's Valentine's, and so it's a great topic to chat about because it's something that comes up a lot when diagnosed with alopecia and something that we all sort of, face obstacles with. So we're happy to talk about it today. As Judy mentioned, my name is Allison.
And I'm Donna.
And so we're just gonna jump into it. These are the topics that we're going to be discussing today. So generally how to talk about it to dates, dating apps, how to navigate that, how to discuss alopecia to potential people that you're meeting, common struggles when dating and coping tools to manage some of those obstacles. And then also space for you guys to ask us questions. Alrighty. So first, how to talk about alopecia, dating-wise, dating apps, and all of that.
So if you wear wigs, when you disclose that you're wearing a wig is most importantly up to you. Now, a lot of people feel compelled or pressured, and Allison and I really want to emphasize there's no space for that in this dating arena. We want you to be comfortable, and we want you to feel that sharing your alopecia is a privilege that you're sharing with someone else. So assess if that someone is someone you want to continue dating, if they're right for you, not that you can please them. And we do feel that the sooner you discuss that you have alopecia, the lower your risk of heartache or potential pain. Because as we all know, the more you get to know someone, the more you attach to them, the more you think about a future with them, and it doesn't work out, the easier we can get hurt. So we invite you to do a cost benefit analysis, which is a fancy way of saying pro con list. So what's the cost of sharing the information that you have alopecia? Well, it could be that this relationship isn't going to continue, but what's the cost of withholding it? You're not being authentic. You might not be comfortable. You might always be anxious that it's going to come out. So what's the benefit of sharing the information? Well, again, it might be that you're being your authentic self, that this person is totally into you, and that's just another piece of information about you. And what's the benefit of withholding it? Well, you're staying in your comfort zone, but as we'll learn more later, that might not always be the best thing.
And I believe we're going to have a poll coming up because, you know, as we said, what we believe is one thing, and then there's also going to be your unique circumstances that come into it. So there's going to be a poll coming up about sort of when do you think is the best time to share about alopecia? And you can feel free to answer that and what you feel like is best. And so if you're someone who doesn't wear a wig, for me, example, I show up on dating apps and in dating without wigs. And this is also, there's no right or wrong choice. That's something I think we really want to emphasize. There's not a right or wrong when it comes to dating with or without wigs. It's really what feels most authentic to you. And we're going to talk about that and aligning that with your values and what feels best. And you also, even if you show up without a wig, I think sometimes that makes people feel entitled to information. I think we've all experienced that with visible differences, that if we look different, people feel entitled to know that information of why. And so when it comes to dating, I think it's really important to know that even if people feel entitled, that you still have the right to direct that conversation. And if someone brings it up before you're ready, you can still say, I'm not ready to share that yet, which we will also be talking a little bit more about as we discuss sort of showing up on dating apps. Well, looks like we have the results here of the poll. I don't know if we want to talk about that. So we have some people saying immediately, most people saying sooner better than later, which is kind of what me and Donna feel, because the longer you wait, the greater the attachment is and the more risk of heartache. But also you want to evaluate first if that person is someone that you feel like you want to get to know and that aligns with you. So, so there's not, you know, after 3 dates is something that I think people mentioned. And I know someone in our community has what is called Debbie's 3rd date rule. And she kind of agrees with you guys that 3 is kind of the perfect number. So it really does depend, but erring on the side of sooner can help in terms of any pain that can be caused.
So what about dating apps? So what's interesting is that Allie and I got this from a few people, that is wearing a wig on a dating app catfishing. I'll let you think about that for a sec. We do know that catfishing is when you are representing yourself as an identity that is not you. So wearing a wig is not catfishing. You are you. You are accessorizing. It's no different than my wearing glasses or my contacts. It's no different than someone using photos of themselves if their hair is dyed a different color than their own. It's no different than if you're wearing Skims under your dress, if you wear dresses. So no, I can reassure you, it is not catfishing.
Absolutely, yes. And if you're someone who's debating if you want to show up bald or patchy on dating apps, if that is what feels comfortable for you, go for it. I know some people who like to have some photos with a wig, some without a wig. Some people just like to have photos with a wig. And if you're someone like me, maybe you don't want any photos with the wigs at all because you're not someone who wears wigs. And so it's really about what feels best for you. And sort of like I was mentioning on the last slide, that sometimes makes people feel entitled to lead a conversation with asking that question. And you'll determine for yourself like what feels like it aligns with your own boundaries. I know from my own experience, sometimes when people lead with that, it's my own little red flag going off of like, I want someone to be more intentional about wanting to know me beyond my appearance, right? And if they're leading with that, sometimes for me, it's a flag of like, I know they don't align with me, right? And so being able to find things or signs and signals to see if that person aligns with you in a way that feels worth getting to know them more. And you'll be able to feel that out by the tone and such of messages. I've had some people be very aggressive with asking that first. And for me, that weeds them out. I think that's sometimes the good thing about showing up without a wig is I've found that it can weed out some people that are just wouldn't be a fit for me long term. And if you feel like someone is approaching it with respectful curiosity, as I like to say, and you feel like it's still worth carrying the conversation, a simple, I understand the curiosity, but I don't feel comfortable sharing that information right now can be useful, right? Like we said before, you have the right to direct that conversation. You don't want to feel like that narrative is being directed by someone else. And so it's okay if someone asks to say, actually, I don't want to talk about that yet. I appreciate the curiosity, but I want to wait until we've met in person or whatever you feel most comfortable with. So that is dating apps. And in terms of how to describe alopecia, I like to keep it simple, and then people can follow up with questions. But I think often what people are most nervous about is, does that mean you're sick? Is it contagious, right? And my typical go-to is telling people that it simply means my hair can't grow in whatever way that works for you. But I think making it known that it's simply your hair is being prevented from growing doesn't mean that I'm sick. I'm not contagious. My body, if you want to get more specific, you can say it's an autoimmune disorder where my body attacks my hair follicles. But I tend to find that, keeping it in a simple description is useful. And in stating it as just like my hair's not able to grow, helps people understand that like, oh, she's just totally normal. She just doesn't have strands coming out of her head and nothing else. Right? And that's the only difference. I still live a completely healthy life without little dangly things off my head, and that's about it. And so, I always try to keep it simple with that. And then, going from there in terms of any follow-ups that they have. All right, now we're going to be talking about sort of the main obstacles that come up with dating and some tools and coping mechanisms that we can use to help ourselves over those obstacles or what might feel like barriers.
So we're talking about guiding your dating by your values. And you can see that there's a big bullseye on your screen. And this is called the ACT bullseye that helps you identify your values and live by them. The center of the bullseye is when you've really achieved that. And that's a hard thing. I don't know how many of us achieve that on an ongoing basis. And also because values change over time. And that's perfectly normal. You can see there are 4 quadrants of values, and these can overlap. So don't get too confused about what's what. The goal is always to just inch closer and closer to that bullseye. Like I'm really living by what's important to me. Well, when we date, one of the big reasons Allie and I wanted to emphasize this is, again, because we want you to date in a way that's right for you, not trying to contort yourself to be what you think your date might want so you have a second date or further dates. Values are not goals. We don't achieve values like we do goals, but values and goals are intertwined. And by living our values, we often have value-centered activities. So we're doing things that resonate with us. Now, again, values are not something we want to do, but rather how we want to live our life. So we set our intentions guided by our values. As we see here, we're doing it for ourselves. And we want to make sure that we're paying attention to our self-worth. So every time we make a decision based on what resonates with us, what's right for us, how we want to be in the world, we're feeling more self-assured. We're feeling more confident. We're feeling like we are the person that is giving the gift of our time to someone else. So we'd like you to think about, where do you fall and where do you want to be? Because we move then into what's called committed action. We decide, these are the steps I need to take in order to live more fully by my values. Well, when we take committed action and we're taking steps to move forward, sometimes that's really hard and it can be pretty scary and we can become quite anxious. So we want to understand what's called our window of tolerance. Now here we have a nice round window, yet another bullseye. And of course, the ideal space is our comfort zone, but very little happens in our comfort zone, right? Feeling very good. We're not feeling a lot of pressure, urgency to do things. So we may not want to get out of that space to try something that might be hard. And being uncomfortable is hard, but being uncomfortable is where dating happens. Also, if we stay in our comfort zone, we're typically trying to escape or avoid those difficult feelings. And we really want to move into those, especially when they're aligned with our values. Because if we don't, they tend to get more difficult to confront and harder to address. So we want to learn that when we feel uncomfortable, it's simply that our body is trying to protect us. It's typically pushing us into something called fight or flight. Many of you are probably aware of that. And it's when your body starts to react as if you're in danger. But not learning how to manage fight or flight holds you back from living a fulfilling life, from having all the experiences that you might want to have, from moving into a loving relationship. So as we write here, the key to dealing with this is understanding your window of tolerance and learning that you can expand that window over time. So we want to cope outside that window of tolerance. We want, again, as I said, move into the stretch zone. How do we do that? My heart's racing out of my chest. I'm feeling so scared. Well, we have many tools, and here are 3 of them. I'm going to invite you to do this one with me. Many of you might know this from doing meditation or yoga. It's breath work. We slow the pace of our normal breath. We breathe in through our nose. We breathe in through our nose for 6 seconds. We hold for a moment, and then we exhale longer for 8 seconds. Doing a series of these breaths will help calm us down, will help make us feel more in control, will allow us to be more present in our lives and the choices that we make. If we're feeling too overwhelmed, we can practice the 5 senses activity. We look at 5 things that we can see, 4 things that we can feel, things that we can hear, and things that we can taste. So it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And finally, we work on reframing thoughts. Can we think of a best case scenario? So how do I most want this evening to go? Can we think of a most likely scenario? When we reframe things, we move again out of our comfort zone. Here you're looking at my face, and if I move the frame, you're likely looking at the books behind me. It's just changing our perception of events so that we can assist ourselves in moving through difficulty. Well, worst case scenario, you're going to end up in that panic zone. And that's a pretty scary place to be. Well, we want to remember that this isn't a place you have to stay. You're thinking catastrophic thoughts. You're not framing yourself in that I can handle this place. You're thinking about it as dangerous, too uncomfortable, the cost is too high. But it's important to center yourself, take those breaths, be mindful, allow yourself to be in a peaceful state, and remind yourself, this is not dangerous. Nothing here can physically hurt me. And the feelings that I'm experiencing will not last. Panic likes to inflate the danger, but we're talking about ways to deflate it and emphasize that you can cope, that you are capable and strong, and that you can move through this feeling into the stretch zone. So our tip skills are the quickest way we can calm our nervous system. And that's by changing our temperature. Well, as you see here, there's different ways to do that. A wrapped ice cube on your skin, a frozen orange, an ice pack on your head. If you live here in the Northeast, you could just step outside for a few minutes into the snow and that'll help you calm down and cool off. A short burst of intense exercise, running up the stairs, doing jumping jacks, running in place, sit-ups, push-ups, whatever works for you, because all the chemicals that we're building up to drive you into panic will be dissipated by the activity, and it will help you calm down. We practiced sun paced breathing earlier. It's when we slow down the pace of our normal breath. We're inhaling longer than we exhaling longer than we inhale. So we're giving our breath time to slow down. When we're panicking, it's because we're overbreathing. We're taking in too much oxygen. And so we want to regulate that by holding in our carbon dioxide. So we want to slow our breathing down. And then finally, one of our most favorites, progressive muscle relaxation. And that's when we go through the body and we alternately tense and then relax the various parts of the body.
Yes. And if we have time at the end, we might do a guided video of progressive muscle relaxation. But if we don't, it's going to be in the post-webinar email. There'll be a link to the guided video. But you can also Google it and a million videos will come up. But yeah, so it's sort of sum up our first piece of this, like being able to identify when you are dating, am I in a stretch or am I in a panic zone before I'm going on this date? Or does even just the thought of being on a dating app put you in a stretch or panic zone, right? And being able to identify where your window of tolerance is at, meeting yourself there first, and then being able to use some of these skills to help teach your nervous system, I'm safe, I'm okay. I think often our nervous system is telling us something catastrophic is happening. And Donna likes to use the bear's eating your face off. Exactly what our nervous system is telling us. And our body can't tell the difference between that and just going on a date when it's in that fight or flight. It thinks those things are happening. And so these skills are really just ways to help, put yourself in the driver's seat rather than the emotion be in the driver's seat, and help bring yourself back down to a state that feels more tolerable. Obviously, dating is never going to feel completely comfortable, which is why in the circles we have dating happens here in the stretch zone, typically does not happen in the comfort zone, which is the really hard part about dating, especially with alopecia, because alopecia in itself already puts us in a stretch zone. Adding something on top of it can rightfully put us in a panic zone, which is why we're here talking about it and overcoming it and how we can overcome it, because it can be genuinely very scary. So giving yourself also some compassion if you notice your window of tolerance is starting out pretty small, because that would make a lot of sense, because alopecia is a lot to handle at first. So these are tools to help you with that. And also just remembering to be kind to yourself. If you're taking stock of this right now, being like, oh God, even just the thought of a dating app feels like I'm going to panic. That's okay. That's your starting point. And there's still room to find support and use tools like this to help slowly and incrementally expand that window of tolerance so that things begin to feel a little bit less overwhelming. And now we're going into some other sort of barriers that come up with dating. I know the self-critical voice, the inner critic, we all have one, but I think with alopecia, that voice can sometimes get louder and feel more overpowering, especially as it comes to dating. I think that inner critic voice as it comes to dating with alopecia really likes to focus on our appearance and our self-worth and giving us all sorts of worst case scenarios that pull us away from our values that we talked about earlier. It's very normal to have this inner critic. Like I said, our goal is not to get rid of it, because you're a human being, you're going to have it. But how can we learn to tolerate and possibly create an inner friend that can sort of counteract this inner critic too, right? And your inner friend is sort of the voice of reason bringing you back to those values. You can use a multitude of different things to help you with this, right? Whether it's visualizing a positive experience, using that inner friend to notice what your values are, visualize an experience that feels in alignment with that. What affirmations would this inner friend give you, right? I'm much more than my hair. You can do hard things. You really can. Alopecia in itself is hard, and you're doing it each step at a time. So that's already proof enough that you can do hard things. You're one day closer to meeting your person regardless if this works out. I'm not defined by how someone views me, right? So just thinking about, those are some examples, but think about for you, what would that inner friend that is aligned with your values say to you? Sometimes it can be hard at first to say it to ourselves, which is why sometimes I frame it as an inner friend. Because if you were talking to your friend and they were nervous about going on a date, I'm sure you would not tell them, oh my God, the worst thing is going to happen. This is going to be the worst day of your life. They're not going to like you because X, Y, Z. You would never say that to a friend. So we want this inner friend to sort of take a step back and be like, okay, how would I describe this to my friend? And can I let that little friend sort of live within me as I go on this date? And that's really important when it comes to this sort of inner critic. So I don't want you to ever judge yourself for having this inner critic. Like I said, we're all human, it's going to be there. But how can we put your inner friend in the driver's seat rather than the critic, right? Notice the critic come up, notice it's trying to protect you in a lot of ways, right? It's trying to keep you safe with these worst case scenarios. It's trying to help you prepare for the worst. It's just really trying to protect you. And at the same time, it can be holding you back from that fulfilling life that we've talked about. So again, some of that self-compassion is there of like, can I let this inner critic come up and almost be kind to it? Like, I know you're showing up to protect me right now, but you're also not helping me. So I'm going to bring in my inner friend to sit with you so we can bring our values back into this, and we're going to walk on this date together. Another sort of tool when thinking about these worst case scenarios that we often go to in our mind before a date, which I think everyone can relate to, alopecia or not. But like I said, when it comes to alopecia, I think it's amplified and really hyper-focused on sort of appearance and what they may think of that one piece of me. And so essentially, the skill of becoming a non-judgmental observer is being able to notice your thoughts and feelings without placing judgment on yourself for it, right? It helps us not let our internal narratives or the narrative of this inner critic spiral out of control. So we have some examples on the screen, which might seem ridiculous, but I want you to honestly take a second to think about your headspace when your brain truly is going through those long spirals. Like, we say some pretty outlandish things to ourselves sometimes that we don't even take a second to reflect and be like, oh my God, I'm like really beating myself up. And so a judgmental observer might say, like, I can't believe I'm feeling so anxious as I look in the mirror right now. Like, why am I so nervous? I'm such a baby. What if they don't like what I'm wearing? What if that ruins the whole date, and I never get to go on another date again, right? Like, the judgmental observer in the worst case scenarios that get created in our mind can truly, and I think as we've all experienced at some point in our life, can really go out of control. So that is sort of what a judgmental observer would look like. We've all been there. The non-judgmental observer would more take a second to say, I notice I'm feeling anxious as I'm sort of looking at myself in the mirror before I go on the date. I can notice my hands are sweaty, maybe my heart's racing. I'm noticing thoughts that I'm worried about how they're gonna view how I look. This is a normal feeling though, considering I'm going on a first date, but I wanna lean into my values and do this for myself and think about that's more about that than if the person likes me. So that is how we can to really take a step back before we go on a date and notice if your mind feels so out of control. Take a second. Can I observe the thoughts and feelings that are coming up without judging myself for them? I think often when it comes to anxiety or fear or guilt or all the things we think are like negative emotions, we put a lot of judgment on ourselves for feeling those, when in reality, they're pretty normal human emotions, and we don't really deserve to judge ourselves for them, especially when it comes to dating, especially when it comes to dating with alopecia, right? These are very normal human feelings. And what helps bring down the intensity of these feelings is if we can allow them to come up without judging them. Judging them gives them lots of fuel. It adds fuel to the fire to make them feel bigger and stronger. And the non-judgmental observer approach sort of disarms that fuel. It stops throwing coals into the fire and it lets the fire sort of dissipate. So just another tool. I know the sort of term of worst case scenario is coming up a lot, and a lot of these tools we're talking about can relate. And so a lot of this is about like trying what works for you, which is why we're kind of giving you a multitude of different things that could work for similar situations. So this is just another one of those. The biggest reminder of all when practicing all of these skills is that it may feel really exhausting at first to constantly have to redirect thoughts, to constantly have to notice things that are coming up in your body and be like, can I intentionally take a moment, implement a skill that is going to help my nervous system notice that like a bear's not running at me right now. And so I've mentioned compassion earlier, but it becomes important again for this because you can't really put too much pressure on yourself to learn a brand new skill. It takes time. And another thing I want you to think about is that it's even harder to implement these skills, especially a new skill when your emotions are really high. So all the things that me and Donna have talked about with these skills, I want you to think about practicing them before you go on a date, before you go on a dating app, right? I like to think like people in the Olympics, they don't go to the Olympics and do their routine the first time there. They have to practice it under low pressure situations over and over and over again so that they can get to the Olympics and feel prepared. Same here. We had to practice these skills in low pressure, low intensity, low emotion situations for our body to feel like they are accessible in higher intensity moments. And so it can be hard to remember though. And that's why, you know, even if you want to start practicing like breathing while you're doing your laundry, breathing while you're walking up the stairs, being a non-judgmental observer, even when you feel good about yourself, not just when you feel bad. You want to start doing those things just in the day-to-day so that when a situation does come up, you are about to go on a date, you feel already like these skills have some practice under your belt and that you can grab them when you need them. Another really important reminder is don't get stuck in doing it right. I think with any skill, whether it's for the purpose of regulating our emotions or any other type of skill, we do often get stuck in, I need to do it the perfect way, the right way. There is none of that. It's allowed to be not linear. There's no wrong or right way to practice anything. So we don't get stuck there. And our sort of favorite go-to reminders are feelings lie, thoughts lie, and the only way that we can actually gather real information is by moving into action. And what we mean by that is when our emotions are really high, our thoughts and feelings can all feel like fact. But when we're going into that worst case scenario mindset, often these things are moving a little bit out of fact and more into distortion. And so we need to remind ourselves of that. And when practicing these skills, it's going to feel hard for your brain not to go back to those narratives. So I want you to know that's not the goal either, to never have a worst case thought again, to never not think in those ways again, or beat yourself up over having alopecia and dating, right? We just want to be able to not let that be in control. It's not about never having those thoughts again. You're a human. They're going to come up. They come up with me, and I've had alopecia for so long now, and this is part of my work and what I do. And these thoughts absolutely come up. It's just a difference in how I'm able to interact with those thoughts and not see them as fact 24/7, right? Knowing when something is rooted in our lived experience with alopecia is also important to know that sometimes it really is, which is why a lot of this anxiety can feel difficult because we may have well had experiences where maybe we get rejected because of our hair loss. And that's very real. So we don't want to invalidate those things, but we also want to know when the emotion feels like it's in the driver's seat and not our values. And the best way to do it is by gathering facts with moving into action, which in this case would be by dating. And possibly the biggest reminder of them all is that alopecia is a teeny tiny sliver of who you are. The right person is going to want to know you way beyond that. This is just like, you know, a little visual of, you know, it's a small piece of all the things that may make up who you are. You want to make your own circle to remind yourself of like, I am so much more than alopecia. Yes, it's definitely a part of you. And probably a part of like what has created you, maybe your perspective in life. Maybe it's part of what shapes some of your values. Like there could be a lot of things that alopecia has maybe influenced in your life, but it's not all of you. And the right person is going to want to know you way beyond that. And that's what you deserve as well. And I think this is also a really important piece when it comes to the body image side of things. I think we get stuck on the fact that maybe I am just my hair. Maybe I'm just the way I look, and no one's going to want to see anything past that. I think with dating, it can feel like that at first, especially in this world of dating apps. Everything feels superficial. It's hard. It's genuinely really hard. And even in the midst of that, we need to find the reality of, absolutely, there are some people who that might be an issue for. And there's also a lot of people who that would not be an issue for, right? And so noticing, validating that part of the reality, and also challenging the part that maybe wants to say, no, it is everyone who's not going to like me because of my hair loss. We have so many examples on social media and people in our community who have very fulfilling relationships with hair loss. So I encourage you, if you're online, to build up your feed. But I think recently, even today, because it's February, I'm seeing all people post like their stuff about their relationships with alopecia, and it's so cool to see. And I think it's a really good reminder, because if we're also not exposing ourselves to that, it's really easy for those narratives to spiral and get out of control, where we're not seeing that evidence of, oh, there is evidence contrary to this as well. And sometimes we truly just need to see that. So truly, it is a small piece of you, and the person that is worth your time and energy is going to see way beyond it, even though it might not feel like it in the moment. It's true. Alrighty. I know we also had the progressive muscle relaxation video. So do we want to?
I think so.
Okay. Cool. Bear with me. Let's see if I can do this well.
So Allie's putting that together. We were joking around a little bit, and many of us have seen the Barbie movie, and we saw when Ken discovered that he was Knuff, and we just giggled a little bit to say, we know in the alopecia community, we are enough. Get it? Get it? No. She got it. Okay.
For some reason, it is when I pull it up, I don't know if it's possible on Judy's end, the link I sent, but for some reason when I'm pulling it up on my end, it's like making my face disappear, and I'm not able to click the share screen button. I don't know what that's about.
Yes, I'm trying to log it in as well.
Well, we can lead a progressive muscle relaxation. And we can share the link afterwards.
Whatever you prefer. It depends how simple it is for Judy to pull it up. I don't know why it's doing that to me, but.
So as we're waiting, we just want to really emphasize that values are important because they help us set the intention for our approach to dating. That we want to think about who we are and what we are beyond our hair or our wig. That we want to understand that our focus is more on what makes our life better, what fulfills us and leads us toward the action we want to take, rather than giving to someone else. And we're a gift. Of course, we're going to improve their life.
Okay.
Oh, I think we're ready.
Awesome. Feel free to join along, everybody. Oh, looks like we lost it. But I think oh, there we go. Perfect.
Progressive muscle relaxation. Learning how to deal with stress is a necessary part of life. Everyone deals with stress differently, so finding what works for you is important. Ready to try progressive muscle relaxation? We'll walk you through this easy, stress-relieving activity. Progressive muscle relaxation helps you relax your mind, relax your body, reduce tension, focus your mind, and calm you down. Here's how it works. Tense each muscle group. Hold the tension for 5 seconds. Release the tension. Feel the muscle relax. Try to visualize the muscle tensing and relaxing. Remember to keep breathing deeply through the exercise. Try to focus hard on each step. If your mind begins to wander, bring it back to the muscle you are working on. Let's start with your head. Close and tighten your eyes. Tense all muscles in your cheeks. Tighten all the muscles around your lips. And press your tongue to the roof of your mouth. Hold that tension for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Quickly release and relax. Now your shoulders, chest, and back. Raise your shoulders to your ears. Tense your back by pulling your shoulders back. Hold that tension for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Quickly release and relax. On to your hands, fingers, and arms. Bend your wrist and tighten your hands into your fist. Flex your biceps. Hold that tension for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Quickly release and relax. Now for your belly. Pull your belly button in and tense all the muscles in your stomach. Hold that tension for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Quickly release and relax. Moving on to your legs and your feet. Tighten your thighs by pressing your knees together. Pull your toes towards you and feel the tension in your calves, thighs, and feet. Hold that tension for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Quickly release and relax. Breathe deeply and imagine a peaceful sensation flowing from your head, down your neck, into your chest, legs, and settling into the soles of your feet. Repeat this process when necessary until you feel calm and peaceful.
Thank you for sharing, Judy. So yeah, just to round it out, that's just another tool for your toolkit of when your body starts to feel so overwhelmed, because dating is overwhelming with alopecia. And I just want to reiterate that point again of being able to notice what's rooted in reality and when your brain is in that spiral point, because it's very important that we validate the very real experience it is with alopecia, and that there is some people who really don't deserve our time because they really will judge us off of our hair loss. And on the other hand, there's also some really great people that will be worth your time who won't care about that. And finding that balance of noticing, validating what needs to be validated, challenging what needs to be challenged, and using tools in between when it feels overwhelming. So,
and not jumping to conclusions ahead of time, because again, that's where we kind of get into our panic zone, where we're already deciding for ourselves what's going to be happening. And we really want to go back into saying, wait a second, what's a likely scenario here? And to envision that we can cope with this, that we can handle this, and that they might not be right for me, but they're probably a nice person. And if they're not, I can remove myself from the situation. I don't have to stay there. So you've got this. I really urge you to move yourselves into action, to say what's right for me, how do I want my life to be, and what are the steps I'm going to take to make that happen. And then enjoy the experiment. It can be marvelous. And yeah, it might also be pretty terrible, but that's when you go to your friends and your community, and we're all here for you.
right.
So it's all
only,
learning.
It's only that we can appreciate the great person who's going to come into our life because of those people who sucked. And my cat really wants to join now. I'm sorry. The progressive muscle relaxation got him really excited. He joined right in the but yeah, it's true. Like we don't get to experience the good stuff if we hold ourselves back from the bad stuff, right? It's unfortunately a package deal. We get the good with the bad. And if you want the good, we got to have some of the bad. But if we don't
move out of the comfort zone.
Right. But we won't have either if we don't move into that action, as we're sort of encouraging you to do. Action that is aligned with your values, that is.
So are we ready for Q&A?
Yeah. If that's okay with you, Judy.
Yes, I have a few here that I can start with. I have somebody who's asking, does your advice apply to men as well as women? Are there different challenges that men face when it comes to dating with alopecia?
Okay.
Sure. The terms of the skills that we're talking about absolutely apply no matter who you are, what gender you identify with, applicable to everybody. Absolutely, I think there could be differences in terms of just dating in general. I'm sure there's different obstacles for men versus women. I know WAIGS is probably a conversation that probably comes up more on the woman side. I'm sure with men, there tends to be less options, I think, in terms of even wig related things. And I think because of that, it may feel like there's less choice in how you show up. And I think that can feel more difficult. But the same skills would apply for that discomfort that brings up.
One thing I've noticed with guys is that at times they feel they get overlooked in the discomfort and difficulty they may have going into the dating arena, because people are like, oh, well, it's fine if guys don't have hair. And it doesn't minimize the discomfort you might be feeling and the pain that you may have. And so I want you to know you're acknowledged and that we get it, and that the skills that were outlined here, that Ali so ably defined about that inner critic versus the inner friend. Bring your friend with you. You know, you deserve support too. You deserve compassion and understanding. And we get it. It is challenging. It is difficult, but the rewards can be glorious.
Okay, thank you. I have another one, and everybody you can still put in your question to the Q&A. We have another one that says, have either of you been able to find successful relationships since your hair loss? I'm looking for encouragement and hope from a success story.
Well, I was married when I lost my hair, but I have to say that I did get hit on a lot. I didn't always wear a wig. In fact, for many years, I did not wear a wig, and I really got asked out often in my younger years. So I did not find that was a barrier. I think it's because I was living my values, and because I felt by focusing on that, I felt confident in myself because I was doing what I wanted to do and approaching the world in the way that felt authentic to me. And I think that resonated with people. And so many people say there's nothing sexier than confidence. And I invite you to consider that.
And on my end, I've not had hair at all since the age of 6. So I've fully been through my dating life without hair and not wearing wigs. And I've had long-term relationships. I still successfully date. I think there can feel like there's that pressure of like, oh, my friends maybe have more matches on dating apps than I do. And that might be a very real thing. But I think the quality of the matches that I have on dating apps is a lot higher than some of the matches my friends have. And for that being that, you know, sometimes I call this like my F-boy shield. I'm like, it really like weeds people out in terms of people who are not going to be, you know, dating just superficially, which is not aligned with my values. And in some cases, like it might feel like there's less prospects, but the quality of them is better because me showing up in what feels my authentic self. And it kind of does weed people out a little bit, I won't lie, which can feel hard, but it's also useful because I don't have to go through as many, you know, what do they call like as many frogs before I find the prince. So it definitely poses its challenges, but keeping rooted in those values and knowing that ultimately for the right person, which for, you know, it only takes one person, right? That's another thing I like to think of. Well, I mean, for those who like to, you know, who are in relationships and multiples, then it only takes however many you want to be in, right? But I think we get overwhelmed of like, I need everyone to like me. It just takes that one person though. And keeping that perspective in mind has really been helpful for me. And knowing that for the right person, this doesn't make any difference. It might feel like there's less people interested, but the quality of people who are, for me, I've noticed is better. So I hope that is some encouragement.
Great, thank you. Another one is, how do you handle seeing people you know on a dating app? Sometimes I get so self-conscious when I see people I know.
Well, one way to think about that is they may be experiencing the same thing because they're likely seeing you as well. So it's often to kind of pull back and gain the bigger perspective that as much as you're feeling it, and we validate that, when you think about it, everybody on those apps is having some feelings about it and probably a certain level of discomfort or anxiety about what's next.
Right. I agree. People are always, I feel like, a certain level of anxiety when they see people they know. And I think rooting that back again into like, what is it for you? For me, if there's someone I've known that I see and I've known I don't really align with them, I'm like, okay, next, right? I keep myself in the driver's seat there rather than thinking about what are they thinking about me? More about like, well, how am I viewing them? Is this a prospect that I would want to meet? Is this someone that I would want to give my energy to or want them to know my story? But yeah, I think there's probably anxiety on both sides with seeing people who you're familiar with on dating apps, and that's very normal. And again, putting it into that context of they're probably also feeling something about it too, but also you ultimately get to make that decision for yourself of what feels most comfortable and aligned.
Okay, the next question is, I struggle with feeling feminine since I'm bald. What are some tools to help me feel comfortable with men?
Allie, I think that's up your alley.
Sure. I think that's such a common struggle. I think for me, for the longest time, like the back of my head, the side of my head, like that was the hardest view for me. Because for me, I was like, ooh, that feels very manly or something about that. And I know that's actually very common. I've seen other people online talk about the same thing, that those same certain angles that feel less feminine are hard for them. And again, it's sort of about what feels best for you. I know some people, for them, like big earrings, big sunglasses are like their accessorizers, right? For me, it's eyeliner. Something about my eyes for me is what makes me feel most feminine. And that little black line above my eye really does it, right? And so, but that took some time for me to explore and figure out for myself. I think it takes some also intentional time of seeing photos of myself at angles that maybe used to feel really uncomfortable or manly to me. And really taking a second to be like, who decided that? Who decided that being bald wasn't feminine? Does that even align with how I view beauty? And it doesn't, right? My definition of beauty does not align with societal's definition of beauty. And I have to constantly remind myself of that. And through that, like now I love seeing side photos in my head. I think it looks feminine to me, right? And so it's actually incredible what we can do if we take a second to reframe. And slowly over time, I don't want you to think this happened overnight where suddenly I felt more feminine, bald. But chipping away slowly at adjusting my definition of beauty and femininity to match my own values and decide like, well, who decided this was masculine, not feminine? Oh, okay, these bigger, wider systems that I don't really agree with made this arbitrary rule that this is feminine, this is masculine. And I actually don't agree with that. I think I look pretty feminine the way that I am. And I've just found ways along the way that make me step into that, help me step into that, which for me is my eyeliner and sometimes eyelashes are my go-tos. But it definitely is making sure that your definition of beauty and femininity is aligning with you and noticing if it's not, who decided this for me, and do I want to change that a little bit? So I hope that answered the question.
Yes, thank you. Here's another one. My daughter has alopecia and dating. What can I say to boost her confidence while going through this? It is very discouraging at times.
Well, I think Allie kind of really talked about that, in that it's a lot about her being willing to find what works within herself and to see her own value and to recognize that her attention to others is a gift, but that Allie, I mean, I think again, I would invite you to hop in because these are all the things that you were talking about knowing that you're going to weed out people who are not worth your time.
Right. And in terms of like what to say to your daughter, I know it can be really hard as a parent, like wanting to step in and just be like, you're beautiful no matter what, and you're still gorgeous and all these things. And I think when it comes to alopecia, like we can say that all day long, but it really has to be, we have to help them see their intrinsic value and not just base it off of appearance, right? And so, like Donna was saying, the things we mentioned earlier about having your daughter's values in the driver's seat, letting her know that she has just as much of a right to evaluate if this person is right for her than she does to him, and vice versa. And that her intrinsic value is what's really important here rather than the external piece, which at a young age is so hard to overcome. So I also want to validate that it's not a perfect science. It's going to feel uncomfortable, as we've talked about. But the more and more that we can really step into our values and knowing that it's more about our intrinsic value than anything else is what's most important.
I think it's hard to hear this, but even haired people have challenges with dating. And they can encounter a lot of people that don't contact them back or don't follow up. So it's easy for us to personalize that because we don't have hair. This is why this is happening. And that becomes a real vicious cycle where we reinforce I'm not good enough. But I invite you to step out of that. I don't know that we really have evidence that that's the case, and that you're just not reading the right people is more likely an explanation.
Great,
so
you.
sadly, that means a lot more dating, which gets you into your stretch zone.
I think we still have time for one more. Can you share some red flags we may see from potential dating candidates that we can see in the conversation stage? Assuming this is for online dating, is what they're referring to. So we may avoid progressing to in-person encounters if it's not convenient for us. For example, someone who might be just curious about wigs and would like to have access to our bodies to prove something, see something, possibly even prove a point.
Yeah.
Good question.
Red flags. Oh, so I mean, one of the biggest, I think I mentioned it a little bit, and this is going to be a little bit different for everyone in terms of what their own red flags are. But for me, when someone leads with needing to know or interrogate me about questions related to my hair, which is often what I find when people lead with wanting to know about that, it feels very like an interrogation. For me, that's not someone that personally feels like they align with me, right? A red flag for me, I mean, a green flag for me is someone who's able to get to know me first a little bit, even just chatting wise over text, beyond needing to ask about any of that first. In person, I think we need to have have a good understanding of what our boundaries are, to know what the red flags are. And if those boundaries are being crossed, then that's sort of a signal for you of maybe this is not someone who maybe respects me or my experience. And if they're trying to have access to that before you feel ready, that's also another red flag, right? You don't want to feel like I don't want you to ever feel like you're being pushed to share before you're ready. Obviously, we said sooner is better than later, but you still feel like you should have control over that narrative. And if someone is quickly trying to take that from you and constantly be pushy about it, or want to see wigs all the time, or, if I feel like you listen to your internal compass a little bit, like if something feels a little bit off, might be a little bit off. And so give yourself room to listen to your gut with those things.
No, I totally agree with that. If something's making you uncomfortable, if you're feeling pressured, as Ali said, if you're feeling you're being interrogated, if somebody's asking you about things that are very private before you even know this person, red flags, step away. This is not what you signed up for. And again, we reinforce you're dating for you, not for them, not so they like you, but so that they can prove that they're worthy of you and that they fit into your life. So if it's not feeling like that, as much as we may be reluctant because we're on a date or we're potentially going on a date and we really want that, I would say, as Ali said, listen to your gut, follow that internal compass and walk away.
Yeah, walking away is hard. And I think especially with alopecia, we have that fear. I've had the fear of, well, I'm not going to find anyone else who likes me with hair loss. Like I have to settle for this. You don't have to settle. I know it's really hard in the moment to remember that, but you do not have to settle. The right person is going to love you way beyond hair loss.
Wonderful. Absolutely. Thank you. Well, I think that concludes our Q&A. Thank you all for being here today. Please remember to share your feedback on today's webinar and help us plan future presentations. A link to a short survey will pop up in your browser window at the end of the webinar, and your feedback is greatly appreciated. And join us for our next webinar, Integrative Medicine, what it is and how does it fit into alopecia areata treatment. It aims to bring the best from both conventional and alternative medical approaches to better meet the needs of a patient. In this webinar, join dermatologist Dr. Peter Leo to learn more about integrative medicine, including what we know and what's still being explored in complementary and alternative methods for treating alopecia areata. This webinar will take place on Tuesday, March 5th at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific time. Registration is now open at naf.org webinars. And we're happy to announce that registration is now open for NAF's 39th Annual Patient Conference. This year, it will be held June 27th through June 30th at the Hyatt Regency Washington on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. This conference is the largest gathering of alopecia areata community in the world, and you are invited. Register today to take advantage of our early bird discount ending February 29th. And don't forget that NAF offers a number of resources and programs to the alopecia areata community, including support groups, our youth mentor and legislative liaison programs, as well as news and webinar links and how to get involved. To learn more about NAF and the resources we offer, please visit naf.org or email us at support@naf.org. This concludes today's webinar program. Thank you, Allison. Thank you, Donna, for this great information. And thank you all for joining us. We look forward to seeing you on the next webinar.